let's get started. Yoga and bone and joint health. There's kind of a normal process that happens in your bones. There's osteocytes that are mature bones. There's kind of a slow process that kind of makes new bone, and then there's a removing function of the bones where some bone matter is removed. So this process usually slows down a little bit when people get older, but for an average age person, if this process is in balance, there shouldn't be any bone problems. The osteoclast function, the removing of the bone cells, if that is too fast, or if the creation of the new bone matter is too slow, it creates bone weaknesses. So if these three functions, if one of them isn't working properly, then people are more likely to suffer from osteoporosis, which is weak bones, low bone density. And this is directly from my notes from my yoga therapy workshop in India. Rickets, I don't really know what that is, but it's some bone problems that is common in children. The most dangerous or the most common imbalance is that the removing of the bone tissue is too fast. Is removing too much of the bone structure. The most common causes, also you can kind of tell from what the cure is. It's always the opposite of the cause. So lack of calcium. Calcium is there's a lot of calcium in milk and probably also other things to eat. A vitamin D deficiency in the United States. I think there's a lot of milk that is vitamin D enriched. Also, vitamin D is a funny thing. Your body produces some vitamin D just by being outside in the sun. So in the middle of winter, it might not help to be outside if the sun is hardly visible, but the skin or something happens when you're in the sun that where there's some vitamin D production in the happening in the body. But when you're in the middle of winter, it's not a bad idea to get a little bit of vitamin D from artificial sources, vitamin D enriched milk. On average, because Ayurveda and yoga are from India, this is not really something they talk about much because the environment is so different and the sun all year long. So they don't recommend any things added to natural fresh food, but vitamin D enriched milk is there. Then also vitamin D deficiency can also be caused by the menstrual cycle, and when a mother is producing milk, it can cause a lack of vitamin D for the mom. Then the other cause for bone problems is lack of exercise. So any kind of movement is actually good for the bones. The more you move, the more your bones are happy. Some bone problems are just more common with elevated age. I think Iyengar was doing probably 3 hours of yoga every day. When I think he died at the age of 94, but he also had bone issues in his 90s and probably maybe 80s. Then there's, this is actually something I raised I think I talked about this briefly last time. Unfortunately, in yoga culture, any kind of disease is viewed as you doing something wrong, but that certainly is a problem. I know from my research time at the university that what we call modifiable behaviors, nutrition, exercise, smoking, all that stuff, account for, in some cancers, 60% of the incidence of cancer can be explained by high modifiable behaviors, but there is a lot of cases where people don't really do anything that typically is associated as a cause for this, for not just cancer, for any disease. So there's a large portion of diseases, especially when you get older, that just happens. And I mean, it kind of makes common sense. No one lives forever. You die of something. So a lot of disease just happens, especially when people get older. I think the culture in yoga is that you must be doing something wrong, and that's why you get sick. I think even in young age, that's not true. But of course, when yoga was developed is the wrong word, but came into existence, life expectancy in India might have been 40 or 50 or even less. So there's this slight trend to think that, especially if someone is in middle age, that they must be doing something wrong. So this is, I think our teacher wrote this down because I asked a question about this, and she said hereditary causes exist for any disease, but she said it could be overcome by, you just have to do more. So if cardiovascular disease runs in your family, then you do some of the yoga therapy targeting that specific issue, and then you're fine. You don't have to worry about it, as long as you know that this is something that runs in your family. So there's several Bible is maybe not the right word, but books that are highly respected, that are very comprehensive. I have one of those books. It's orange, and I think it's called Asana, Pranayama, Mudra, Bandha, something like that. Bandhas are the mudras are, I think, the hand signs that some have some meaning. So for instance, this, I think, has a meaning. And actually, I should know this, I forget. I don't really believe in that stuff, but it's in the book. But the part of the book that I find most interesting is the asana and the pranayama. And it's almost 400 pages thick, and it never talks about bone health. So in traditional India, there's absolutely nothing about your bones in the old books. So why is that? Yoga, the asana, the poses are basically broken down into, not broken down, there's three parts that should be in balance: your body, your breath, and your mind. And your body is strength and flexibility, your breath should be long, and your mind should be focused. So all these three things should improve together. So if someone is just lifting weights, flexibility is suffering, so the body is half improving, and the other half is not improving, and the breath and the mind might not improve either. But basically, all these things improve. There's roughly 70 classical poses. So if you have the strength and the flexibility to do all those, then you would be considered. Your hips are open, your chest is open, your shoulders are open, everything is functioning properly. But what happens then is you do more complicated poses that involve some opening of the joints also. So this is also quite dangerous. Iyengar, I think, had several injuries because he was pushing himself too hard, because joint opening is kind of risky. So the joints, there's a reason why there's ligaments and all that stuff around. The knee, for instance, is a complicated joint. So if any one of them breaks, your joint is less protected, and the remaining ligaments are also more likely to experience problems. But so this is kind of what Iyengar did. He started with the 70 classical poses and then moved on. So yoga doesn't directly talk about bone health, but like we said earlier, if you don't exercise, it's bad for your bones. If you move more, it's good for your bones. So yoga itself is, by its own definition, it's not exercise, because there's this focus on the breath. You're moving very little. You're holding something for a long time. Your breath never picks up. It's supposed to stay calm. So which is kind of different from normal exercises. You push your breath to the limit, and then your resting breath improves. So it's for that reason, at least yogis say yoga is not exercise. But but since you're moving, it is in exercise in the sense that it's good for your bones. Then there's something else. There's lots of uncomfortable poses that we try to stay in for a long time. And this has been shown to improve bone health. So we know that people who do a lot of yoga have high bone density. And if they have bone problems, it's more likely to come from maybe some nutritional deficiency. So what are some of these poses? The easy answer is, I mean, all of them. But if you look at a few poses, I wrote down 3 poses here. You can see where the pressure is. For instance, Thunderball Pose is you sit on your heels. And there's a lot of pressure on the shin and the knee. And you're supposed to sit like this for, I mean, you can do your breathing exercises and your meditation in Thunderball Pose. For most of us, we will be quite uncomfortable after 30 seconds. So you just basically sit on your heels, your hips are over the heels. And also for many of us, the hips don't even go that low. So I would put in a cushion to make it between the heels and the hips to make the position a little less painful. But yogis do recommend that if something is uncomfortable, to keep doing it, so that it becomes, so that you move from uncomfortable to comfortable. So something that used to be painful moves to uncomfortable, and something that used to be uncomfortable moves to comfortable. And then you can adjust the pose. I mean, the seated poses are a little different. But active poses, a seated pose is a passive pose, but an active pose should never be easy. There should always be a little bit of effort involved. That's why the people move past the classical poses. So there should be an effort involved. With seated poses, you adjust them. So instead of sitting on the heels, you put the heels out and then you sit on the floor. And if that's comfortable, then you lean back. So the feet are still, the legs are still in the same position, but then you slowly work back until you are flat on the floor. So this is, all of these things are good for your legs. So your feet have a high amount of pressure, especially if you're in what's called reclined hero, when you move from Thunderbolt to laying down. So there's a lot of pressure on the feet. There's some pressure on the shin bone. The knee is getting squeezed a little bit. So if your shin is on the floor and your thigh is going down, and this is causing a little bit of a suction inside the knee. So if there was a ligament or more likely cartilage or the meniscus that is damaged, it gets sucked into place. Is the theory. So when you have knee problems in India, they usually tell you to sit in Thunderbolt Pose longer and longer. And not in this training. In this training, I didn't actually meet anybody that had knee problems, but in my first yoga training in 2012, there was a Canadian woman with me in that training, and she said after a month that her knee pain did improve quite a bit. And the next one is down dog. So there's a lot of pressure on the wrists, which is supposed to be mitigated by the hand pushing down. So the hand pushes down and then the wrist can maybe not lift, but have less pressure. But it's good for the wrist if it can be worked up to a place where you can go into downward facing dog and you don't have to come out after 20 seconds or 2 minutes, because your wrists are able to hold that pressure. So of course you can mitigate it by pushing the hand down. The knuckles of the hand are pushing down to relieve the wrist a little bit. But of course, in the long run, there's some pressure on the wrists, and that's not necessarily bad. If it's too painful, then it's not recommended you do that. You can do other things. In the Iyengar Yoga Institute in Pune, they put a toothpick here, and then they tell people to push the hand into the wall. So the toothpick is here, and when you push it into the wall, you hold the toothpick basically. So the teacher just puts it slightly in here, and you have to maintain a 15-pound pressure, or whatever pressure you have to have to keep the toothpick from falling down. So that's how you build up the wrist strength to do more intensive poses like down dog. The third example I have here is headstand. Headstand is actually done on an equal-sided triangle, like this. So you interlock your hands like this, your elbows are down, and then your head goes into this triangle, and then you come on your head. You walk your feet forward. It can be against the wall, and then most of the weight is actually on the elbows. So the bones, the elbows are getting strengthened, because if you stay in a headstand for 2, 3, 4 minutes, basically 80% of your weight is here. Your hands are also getting some weight, but your head is supposed to be, there shouldn't be a lot of pressure on the head. So all the bones that are basically holding you up are strengthened. And of course, I'm limiting this here to 3 poses, but so bone health is improving because of all that pressure on the bones. How do we know for a fact that pressure on the bones is good for bone density? I think there was a medical anthropologist who found found a body from the 1700s that must have had a crutch, and the bones under the crutch were all twice as strong. 300 years after this, there was some imbalance in the skeleton too that indicated that this person was leaning to the side where the crutch was. So there's a lot more information than that, but we know for a fact that pressure on the bones is good for you. So where we typically sit and sleep, we are completely cushioned. Although that is of course more comfortable, this is actually bad for you. So your couch, all your cushioned surfaces are not really good for you. If you sit on the floor and you have this much foam under the carpet and a thick carpet, the best thing is really to expose your bones to some discomfort every once in a while. So you can do yoga, or you can go on your concrete driveway and just roll down the driveway. Anything that's uncomfortable for your bones is good for your bones. Then there's a couple other things that have to do with bones or more joint health. In Yin Yoga, you do yoga without warming up. And the deeper goal here is to stretch the joints more than the muscles. So when the muscles are not warmed up, when you start Yin Yoga, you force the stretch more into the joints. So for instance, this is a very simple joint. You go like this. If you don't feel a stretch in this muscle, then this muscle is opened. This muscle is extended, because now you feel skeletal resistance. And this is different for each person. So for instance, some persons slightly hyperextend, they go a little lower here, or some people can't make the arm straight. This is also fine, there's no problem. It's just, as long as you don't feel a stretch here, if you feel a stretch here, you're not extended. There's a muscular resistance to the movement. But if there's a skeletal resistance to the movement, that means your muscles are extended as much as they need to be, because your bone is hitting something here. So this doesn't need to go further. But this is not the best example because this is a simple joint, but if this muscle isn't warmed up, and let's say I have a little bit of play here, then if I go further, it opens up this joint more because the not warmed up muscle is forcing the stretch more into the joint. So the problem with that is that I know several people who do Yin Yoga on a regular basis, mostly in India, and they don't have any problems, maybe because they do a lot of other yoga too, and they walk a lot and all that stuff. But Yin Yoga in the West is often done as a relaxing form of yoga, but because the warm-up is missing, it can stretch your ligaments, which can, if you're lacking exercise, other than if you're just doing Yin Yoga, it can overextend the joint, and you don't really want to stretch out the little stuff around your knee or any other joint without any other accompanying yoga or something else. So it's not recommended for people who don't do yoga or exercise. So in Yin Yoga, you're holding poses for 5 to 10 minutes for a long time. There's many passive poses, but also active poses. And it, like I said, it loosens up the joints. And the risk is basically that you offend the joint this way. So for instance, in lotus pose, where you're sitting cross-legged, well, you start with cross-legged, but then one leg goes close to the hip, and then the other foot goes over, so you're in a lock. There's a lot of pressure on the knee to go sideways. So this would be a typical Yin Yoga stretch. You can, without warming up, go into lotus pose, and you can damage your knee while you do this very easily. The people that I know that do this have no problems with lotus pose. They can sit there for half an hour and not get tired or in pain. But it's not Yin Yoga, as relaxing as it seems when you do it, has
April 5th, 2016. This is an idyllic Southern California spring day.
Let's see. All right, and then there's also specific yoga poses for people that have osteoporosis or weak bones. And this is what on my last trip, the yoga therapy teacher suggested. There's one pose that should be done, and actually we do this, I do it in my yoga class every day, but we don't do it for very long. But basically, you do what this guy on the picture is doing. You squeeze both feet together, you lift your head, and then you can stay like this in the middle. You can also rock up and down a little bit and rock to the side. And rock to the side with slightly different pull of the knees. So this guy has his knees close to the chest. You can lift them a little more, and then when you rock side to side, it gets a different part of the back. So basically, you're pressurizing the most important part of your skeleton, the back, and the rib cage a little bit. So when you rock side to side, you put pressure on the rib cage. So this is supposed to be done for a week at with increased time. So someone who is very unfamiliar with this, maybe just 1 minute, but it can be done with a little break. You can do it for 3 to 5 minutes and then take a little break, do another 3 to 5 minutes. So the bones get the message that they need to get stronger. So it's 1 minute is okay to start, but in order for your bones to get the message to get stronger, it should be a lot more than 1 minute. So this can be done for a week or for 2 weeks, just this pose. So it just gets the rib cage and the back. This was the recommendation from my yoga therapy teacher. Then for the week 2, the recommendation is to go outside in the sun. So this is actually interesting because that promotes vitamin D production in your body, which helps with bone health. But you do a bunch of stuff on all fours. So you can do cat-cow pose where you're on all fours, and then you exhale and you round your back, and then you inhale and then you concave your back and you look up. So you can do that for a while. You can do other stuff too. You can just move your body on all fours. You can come on the elbows. You can do something called thread the needle pose. So you're on all fours and you move one arm under, and then maybe put the head on the floor as well. And then the other side. Everything is always both sides. You can do also what I do every time is spinal balance. So you just lift one leg and one arm. What this does, so now your wrist has twice as much pressure. Your knee has twice as much pressure if you lift one leg, and you're just balancing on one hand and one knee instead of two knees and two hands.
Are you lifting the arm on the same side as the leg lift, or on the opposite
No.
side?
You can lift it on the same side, but that's actually an advanced pose. You do opposite side. So right knee down and left, I'm sorry, right leg, left arm up, and then the other side. When you do it on the same side, it's doable. It's just it's kind of a fun balance game. And also, if you have all of these things are very slow and are very boring. So if you have for 15 to 20 minutes on all fours, the first day I wouldn't lift the one leg and one hand. I would wait maybe 5 days before I do that. If you're diagnosed with osteoporosis, the more uncomfortable you are, or the longer you do it, the more your bones are going to kind of get the message from your new exercise routine that they need to do something, that they need to get stronger. So this is week 2 of this suggested yoga therapy treatment. And week 3, I have a couple videos here, is so mountain pose and down dog is the same. There's 2 traditions, Hatha yoga and Ashtanga yoga, and there's a lot of different yoga variations come out of either Hatha or Ashtanga. So power yoga in the US is from Ashtanga. Iyengar yoga is more Hatha. So they have different names. I should have, no, I didn't. So down dog and mountain pose. So you come into what I call down dog. Normal down dog is the hands down, the feet are down, and you try to straighten the legs. You try to drop the chest. So you're like this. Then you can, maybe not the first day, but after, if you do this for the first time, 1 minute might be a very long time, but you can try to do this for 3-4 minutes before you take a break, and then second pass. And then you can try to come on the toes. So that's good for the bones in the toes. That might not be the most important part of your body to you, but your feet are under pressure, your toes are under pressure. So that's good for the feet and the toes. Then you can go into 3-legged down dog. So you lift one leg up, and you can play with transitions. So instead of just standing and going into down dog, you can come into child's pose, where your knees are a little bit apart, the toes are touching, and then you just relax down. You can come into down dog from child's pose. It's more difficult that way. So your chest is down, and you just tuck your toes in under your hip, and then you just push your hip up without lifting the chest. So your chest stays low in down pose, and your legs work themselves up, and the head stays low the whole time. So I have, I didn't find anything in English, interestingly, for, this is called dynamic mountain pose or dynamic down dog. But I found a French guy. So this is more Hatha yoga, Iyengar yoga is a form of Hatha yoga, and it's very popular in France. So, but it doesn't really matter because we can just see this video. It doesn't have any words on it. So here's an example of a dynamic mountain pose exercise. So you just come up from child's pose, and you kind of keep moving around a little bit on the toes. This is 3-legged dog. Provides more of a calf stretch. yeah, I would do this. So this guy obviously has done this before. I would do this with both feet first. And after a few days would do a one-sided. I think this is this. Yeah. So then he just, at the end, he goes back. He does the same thing on both sides and then goes back into child's pose. Let's see. I think the other one was different. How do I go back? So the second one, when I put this together, I think it was a little different. Same guy. So also you can see here it's a mountain on the left corner. You see it's just French. You see we have 5 and 6, number 5 and 6. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 that are probably a series. So he went into Chaturanga, which is a kind of an advanced pose from mountain. I think he's doing it again. So here's bending the toes back and then coming back up. So this isn't for the bones, this isn't necessary. Chaturanga is a little hard. You can do Chaturanga on the knees. You don't have to do it exactly that way. So you can put down the knees first and then do this. But the idea here is if you do mountain pose, then any version of these dynamic sequences are designed to get you very strong hands, very strong feet. Good for your bones. Let me just see if there's anything different. No, it just keeps going back into child's pose at the end. Let me stop this. And so this is week 3. I think there's one more week of this suggested therapy. So the 4th week is you're on your belly. You start with the pose on your belly, and then you do easy Cobra Pose. That's Sagar Bhujangasana in Sanskrit. An easy Cobra Pose is basically you're on the floor like this, and you lift your head. And the goal here is to rotate the shoulders out to make your chest big and to extend up and back. And there's a way to do it. You extend up with the inhale and you extend back with the exhale. And you can repeat this 20 times. You can very slowly breathe. Inhale, up. Exhale, bend back. So this is the starting pose. And every inhale you extend up and every exhale you extend back. And then Bhujangasana is just Cobra Pose where your elbows are up. So you just push your elbows up. And you have to be careful, especially when we get older, we don't want to mess with the lower back, even when we're young. But I guess when we're young, we don't notice that we are hurting the lower back. But when you are lifting your hip from the ground, you are now in Cobra Pose. And your lower back is under a lot of pressure. The lumbar area needs to be protected by squeezing the buttock. When you're squeezing your buttock, your lower back can't bend back as easily, and that kind of protects it a little bit. And you do the same thing in the normal Cobra Pose where you're up. But I would actually recommend to stay in easy Cobra for this sequence. So now your hip, since you're on the floor, your hip bone gets pressure. The lower ribs maybe are on the floor too. So that gets pressure. The front of your rib cage gets pressurized. And so you basically, in those 4 weeks, you put pressure on all your bones. In downward facing dog, it's the feet and the hands. In Cobra, easy Cobra or normal Cobra, you putting pressure on the on the body. In child's pose, which we also did in week 3, you put a lot of pressure on the shin. So if you do this, all these 4 weeks, you're basically covering most of your bones, the back, the hands, the feet, the shins, the front of the chest. Everything has been under the pressure from your whole body weight for a while. If you don't have osteoporosis, but you have a family history or something, or maybe you have just mild osteoporosis, you don't have to, this could be something that you don't do by week, like was suggested here. You could, if you have the strength to do this could be your sequence. You could, instead of doing week 1, 2, 3, and 4, you can just do this in sequence. So that would be one way to do it. You could do 2 or 3 minutes what they, or 5 minutes what they do for week 1, and 5 minutes what is suggested for week 2, 5 minutes week 3, 5 minutes for the week 4, and then you have your 20-minute bone health sequence. If you don't have if you're not diagnosed or you don't have any symptoms, or if you just have mild symptoms. This is designed for people who start out with weak bones. So you don't want to tell someone with weak bones to do mountain pose or down dog pose for 20 minutes, because it actually could make things worse if you damage your wrists because you're not warming up the body correctly. Then then once it might take weeks before your wrist is back, so you're not really helping anything by taking it too fast. Slow and steady wins the race, especially in yoga. And I think that's the last one. Week 4, yeah. Does anyone have more questions? If not, enjoy your strong bones and some vitamin D enriched milk. And also, what's kind of funny is I think the connection between the sun and muscle tone has been noticed by I don't know if it was the Greeks or the Romans, but there's some very old stuff that seems to suggest that if you're outside, your muscles improve. I don't think that's so vitamin D production in I think there's some weird thing going on with muscle tone and vitamin D as well. And it seems to be backed up by modern research, so it's not made up. So even if you're outside in the winter, there's sometimes when there's a little ray of sun. All right. I guess that's all I have for today, and I'll see you again on Monday. Have a good weekend.